You know what time it is.
What's up, beer people?
If you heard it on the hashtag beer time, it's true.
It must be true.
It's true. It is fact. Please, won't you name one of your beers cart horse?
And just do something terrible. Just shit beer. Yeah.
Stick your finger in there every now and again.
Stir it with a sock.
Every show, it feels like my first show.
Every show is a new adventure.
Having some good conversation here, Mr. Troy.
Did I make sense there? I think I did.
I love them all.
Are we off air?
Ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? This is episode 45 of Hashtag Beer Time. How you doing? How you feeling? Oh, it's been an exciting time in the South African craft beer industry. And this show tackles a lot of the issues which have been blowing around in the circles. I'm talking mainly about the Devil's Peak tap takeover. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, well then you need to listen to the second half of the show where I talk to it with my guests. My guest for the show is Mr. Kevin Wood from Darling Brewing Company, which has been around since 2010. They are pretty much considered one of the godfathers of the South African craft beer scene. So we chat about Kevin's journey, the brewery's journey, where they are, the highs, the lows, the struggles that they've gone through in this kind of industry, and what the solutions are for a brewery like him, like a brewery like his, or other smaller breweries in a similar kind of position. So if you are at all interested in the South African industry, not just the South African industry, the craft beer industry, what's happening around the world with bigger guys buying out smaller guys and buying up different retail space, distribution networks, give this episode a listen. I really feel that we touched on some really important points, and please, I really am interested in getting some feedback and knowing your thoughts. So hit me up, let me know what you think. You want to go where everybody knows your name. Maybe it's a pub that you want to go to. Maybe it's just your local bar. But whatever it is, I'm sure you're going to be enjoying a nice, delicious, ice cold beer. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another fantastic episode. Hashtag Beer Time with me, T-Bone Troy. Did you miss me? We are live on Tertian's Vibe Radio. I apologize that I wasn't here last week. I think a lot of the full-time listeners were a bit confused when there was an old episode and they kind of jumped back and forth. But not to worry, I am back in the studio, and what a fantastic 2 weeks it's been. What a great weekend it's been. Lots has been happening in the industry, and we will most certainly talk about that later in the show. But let's get into introducing my guest in the studio. He doesn't need much of an introduction, but I think he also, on top of that, his brewery doesn't need much of an introduction. Let me get straight into saying hello and welcome to Mr. Kevin Wood from Darling. How are you doing, sir?
Hi, Troy. Thanks for the opportunity, and hello, Cape Town.
Yes. Hello, Cape Town. Hello, rest of the world, if you listen to this on the podcast. Kevin, it's tradition on the show to start with the beer. And I'm not going to break tradition. And this is also another first for me, because we're going to be starting with your latest beer. It's a Russian Imperial Stout, and I don't think I've ever started the show on such a high note. So before we get into the whole story, and while I'm opening this, maybe just tell us a little bit about this beer.
We always try and bring out something new, because you never know, it could become one of our core beers. And it's quite a challenge, because two of our core beers, our lager and our Wit beer, it's very difficult to knock those off the pedestal. But we've got to keep adding to the assortment. And if it's a one-off and we've got to bring it back next year, then that's what we do. And we thought, being winter, dark beer, something for the fireplace. We haven't really, our Black Mist does particularly well, but once again, it's quite a niche. So we thought, how do we introduce something a little bit heavier,
yes,
a little bit more body, not necessarily the alcohol, but obviously this thing's got quite a kick to it. But it's one of those beers you want to sit around the fire at night, whether you're outdoors or indoors, and sip it like a glass of wine. But we did get a bit of inspiration from, believe it or all places, Brazil.
Okay.
My cousin owns a brewery there called Sunset Brew. And
Sunset Brew. I'm going to look that up.
Looks like Darling Brew in many ways. I think he just nicked everything, the colours, the font, the whole thing. But anyway,
Thank goodness he's family.
Absolutely. So this is one of his big sellers over there. But obviously we tweak quite a bit of it. For example, we've used Madagascan vanilla pods.
Okay.
And if you pour this beer out into a glass, you'll find fine little pods left at the bottom. It's a bit on the sweet side, but I've got a bit of a sweet tooth, so... You know.
As do I, much to my wife's delight. I hate.
It's got 8% alcohol, it's got 38% IBU, so it's not too bitter. It's actually pretty easy drinking, as is the motto of our stable. It's got a great nose. You can smell the vanilla in there. You can smell the sort of burnt charcoal, roasty grains or malts. I think it's just a delicious beer. As with our philosophy, I try and look for a species that is in trouble. This is quite an interesting story.
We like interesting stories on the show.
We've never gone down the sort of insect route. We've always stuck to the four-legged or the feathered
mammals, birds.
Yeah, and something just said to me. I read an interesting article about how few bugs one gets on their windscreens lately, and it's because insects in general are just disappearing, and that's the poor state of the environment in many ways. So anyway, I did a little bit of homework, and the interesting thing is there's some pretty cool names.
Yes.
In these species list. This one's called the Namaqua arrowhead, and the guy who designed it for me, Carlos, he did a whole lot of work, and the label came out blue. And I said to him, where on earth are you looking? And I mean, this is about to go to print. In fact, it did go to print.
Sure.
And I said, there's something wrong here. Why is it blue? The one I'm looking at is orange.
Okay.
And then I realized he's got the American arrowhead butterfly and not the Namaqua butterfly. Okay. Which is only found in sort of the Roggeveld area.
Sure.
And as you can see, it's a pretty special butterfly. And
yeah, so that is a cool story. I dig that you guys are now branching out to insects. So I think you had mammals, reptiles, birds, and when you say they're in danger, they're obviously endangered or about to, on the endangered list or about to go out of in extinction. That's the word I'm looking for. And we can definitely talk about some of the other stuff and some of the other beers and other traits that Darling carries with it. Let's just jump straight back to this beer. The first thing I did notice is the 8%. Now, I think South Africa doesn't really have that big amount or vast amount of Russian Imperial stouts, and I think as a beer taster of myself, the Russian Imperials that I've tried, they tend to be 10, 12, 14, 16% ones that you get overseas. So I've noticed this is only 8%, but I suppose that's acceptable given the fact that you guys live in a very warm place of the country. And I think South Africans maybe aren't quite ready or used to a very intense beer. So I like that this is, I might be able to have 2 of these at a fire. 3. Not 1 and then go straight to bed.
No, 2. 3, I think 3 is a bit much. I had 2 the other night and I was...
Bedtime.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have a quick sniff. I'm gonna see if I can pick up any of those things. Definitely getting the chocolates, vanilla. It's quite creamy. It does have a medium to actually quite high body,
nice body.
Full body, low carbonation. I do, in my honest opinion, I do find that not just South African Russian Imperial Stouts, but beers from around the world in this style category, you can actually get a totally different beer when you age it for 6 months to a year. So it would be very interesting to see what happens to this beer when it's left after 6 months. I'm not sure if I'm going to have one in the blazing hot summer, but maybe keeping it for a year and seeing how it comes out.
Well, it's already changed.
Oh, really?
So from the time we bottled it, it's changed quite a bit. It's become a lot smoother. And just for interest's sake, we've put 240 litres into a bourbon barrel that Nick from Drifters kindly gave us. So
okay.
We're going to bring out I think there's 500 bottles in November, unique packaging. So I'm very curious to see how that comes out.
Oh, so totally different beer.
Same beer.
It's the same beer, but not. Are you going to call it Arrowhead, or are you going to call it
It'll
Big
be,
Brother?
No. It'll be Arrowhead, but it'll be bourbon barrel aged. We're busy working on all that, but it's the same beer. We just want we want to try something different.
Yeah,
I think that time of the year, people also looking for something different.
Sure.
It's a great gifting idea, but and I mean, I'm a fan of dark beer. Put me around a fire.
I don't think there are enough dark beers in South Africa. Yeah. I've said it time and time again on the show. Why is there not a black Pilsner or black lager, anything dark? I think few people are scared to play with that. But yeah, as you said, give me a dark beer. Oh, done.
Well, I don't drink as many of them as because they're not thirst quenchers.
Well, I think I'm a big fan of the Guinness beers. Well, I say Guinness beers, but Guinness. And a lot of people, when they see me drink it, they think, "Oh, that's so heavy. How can you drink that?" And it's actually not true, because Guinness is one of the lightest beers you can drink, one of the lowest in calorie beers that there are out there in the market. It's almost on a par to Castle Light. Let's jump back to the brand and to stories. I've heard it before, and I think some of our long-time listeners, would have also heard the story of Darling and how you got into it. But if you wouldn't mind just telling us how you got into brewing beer. I mean, what was your journey? What sparked this what is now this massive brewery that you have in Darling? Where did it all start?
I worked corporate my whole life, and I just got to a stage where there was not much left in getting up in the morning type thing. I loved what I did.
You've done it all.
Yeah, it was just something missing. I said to Philippa, let's pack the landy and head to Africa for an undisclosed period of time. Oh. And she said, "Are you crazy?" So I said, "Well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but why don't we go visit all these game reserves north of Tanzania, because that's as far up as I had been. Let's go to all the remote ones and let's see if we can start a safari company."
Yeah.
So that was the goal. And 3 days into our trip, I happened to go to New Bethesda, and I met Andre.
Okay, yes.
From Snewberg. And I didn't go there for his beer. Somebody said, go for his kudu salami. I mean, in those days, like everybody, I drank what was new on the market. So whether it be Heineken, Stella, that was my reference.
Miller's Genuine Gold.
Yeah, that too.
Genuine Draft, sorry.
And I ordered a cheese platter, and this guy came up and he said to me, "How's it? My name's Andre. Will you try one of our beers?" I said, "Sorry, I don't drink homemade beer." And he just looked at me and he said to me, "Well, try this. If you don't like it, don't pay for it."
Yeah.
So he brought this beer to me, and I dubiously picked it up and I tasted it, and I still remember saying to Philippa, "It's probably the best beer I've ever had."
Oh, wow.
And that's pretty much. I mean, I didn't come from a homebrewer's background. I don't know jack shit about, in those days, brewing. I mean, I didn't know that.
I don't think anyone did.
I didn't know the trend in America or anywhere else in the world. I just thought, and when I said to her, "Let's open a brewery back home," she said to me, "Are you mad?"
Yeah, well, a few more adjectives in front,
yeah, totally. So she said, "What do you know about brewing?" I said, "Nothing." "How are you going to do this?" Anyway, we negotiated a price. Andre taught me how to brew. He came and he stuck up these blue food grade vats.
Yes.
And I looked at this when he was putting it all together, and I thought, how on earth am I going to make money out of this tiny system?
Sure.
I mean, coming from Edgar's
Where was this now?
in Darling.
Okay, in Darling. This is where you set up. Okay.
Yeah. It was on the first floor on top of a restaurant.
Okay.
And the restaurant had a wooden floor, which is a no-no. 'Cause every time you messed, the beer or the cleaning agents would run through the floor, and the restaurant owner or manager downstairs.
Like most things in South African breweries, you learn by, making these mistakes. Or
Yeah, and I mean, Andre is 1,000 k's away, and there's just so many things that you just can't get a handle on.
Yeah.
Just your environment.
Yeah.
There's no ambient temperature for one. So the one day it's 30 degrees, the next day it's 20 degrees. It affects the fermentation of your beer.
Yeah.
And everything is manual. So from lifting those 50 kilograms,
Crushing, lifting.
everything. And I mean, in those days we used malt syrup and malt powder. And I just got to a stage where either close this thing down because I really don't know what I'm doing now.
Sure.
And just getting it into a bottle was an absolute nightmare. Those horrible corny kegs that we started with.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, you manually carbonate. So you'd sit there with a stopwatch, shake it for 30 seconds, purge it, then shake it for another 30 seconds, and then hope to God it's carbonated properly. But it wasn't, because the beer would still be fermenting in there because of whatever was going on with the yeast and whatever. And you go and you stand at a festival. I didn't have a license because I didn't know I needed a license.
Sure. No.
Yeah, and I mean, the people would come and say, "Wow, this is fantastic." And one guy said to me, "Have you got a license?" And it's something I never ever thought of.
Yeah.
And you can't stand there and say no. So I had to lie, which it's just one of those things.
Thank goodness it's in the past.
No, totally. And that's pretty much how we got going. But then I just realized the challenges were just... There was nobody around to help you.
What was your first festival? Can you remember?
The Voorkamer in Darling.
Okay.
It wasn't even... I mean, even now we're country bumpkins when you think of our brand versus all the other big guys.
Yeah.
I mean, we're the only guys stuck in the middle of nowhere who play in this space, which is a privilege, and it's frightening.
A challenge.
And inspiring at the same time. But I mean, at the end of the day, anyway, long story short, I didn't even know where to go for help. Andre couldn't help me anymore. The thing was just getting too big. There were questions he couldn't answer. And so I went to the Napier guys. You remember Napier Brewery?
Yes.
And I met with them, drove out there. And if I look at their setup compared to what I had, my God, that
Chalk
was
and
state
cheese.
of the art compared to my little blue vat things. But you look at their brewery today, it's ramshackle type stuff. And they just said to me, "Kev, I'd love to help you, but we can't. We don't have the capacity. We're also grappling with wada. And somebody said to me, go and see Chris at Boston.
Okay.
And that's how I landed up in Boston. I walked in there with one question. Can you keg my beer for me? Not, can you brew my beer for me?
Yeah.
And I got there and I just looked at this guy's setup and I just thought, wow. I mean, if I thought Napier was...
This was bigger, yeah.
This was just, in those days, for microbrewery.
I remember Boston was the brewery of breweries to have your beer brewed at.
Yep. Chris is a great guy.
Yeah.
And
I've spoken to him at length as well. He's very open to talking about beer.
And I just spat it out. I said, this is where I am. Will you brew my beer for me? He said, bring me the recipe. And to show you how the dark ages, or where we were rudimentary brewers, I didn't have a recipe. I had a bucket, white bucket with lines on it, with a different ingredient measurements. Not even a millimeter or a millimeter.
That's awesome.
And I brought this thing to him, and he looked at me and he just shook his head. He said, how on earth am I supposed to take that and stick it into my thing?
Yeah.
So I said, well, then we must just redo the recipes.
Yeah.
And so we redid everything, and that's how we got going. But there was always going to be a lifespan at Boston. I think, like anybody.
You guys, along with Jack Black, I think you guys really rocketed in terms of becoming Cape Town's local flavor. It was you two, Jack Black and Darling, were the beers that people wanted, and I think it's. I find it very interesting how they started at Boston, and then obviously both went different ways. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted you there. Where did you go from Boston?
To Darling.
So you went straight to Darling, and now we're talking about how many years were you at Boston? Was it 8 years, or I'm trying to
2010 to 5 years.
5 years. So 5 years. So 2015, you guys moved back to Darling. Well, actually, you had a proper brewery. So yeah, it's crazy to think that brewery now is 3 years old. It's like, and it's a big brewery. Like, did you ever imagine that you would have that kind of brewery when you started?
You know, I can't even. I really can't answer that question because you don't. I didn't know. All I knew when I saw that little blue system Andre put in for me, I just knew I couldn't make money out of it. Big is relative, I suppose.
Yeah.
Look at our friends down the road.
Sure.
They're monster compared to us. And the guys up in Johannesburg, they're 5 times the size of our brewing capacity. I think we have to focus on quality service. You know, we find ourselves in a very interesting space right now. But
we do, and I think you alluding to the article that was released late last week, but we're going to get into that in the second half of the show. I want to still stay focused on the Darling brand, and I've always been a big. Firstly, I've always been a big fan of Darling. I think your slow beer was kind of one of the first beers that kind of just like got me to perk my shoulders back and head up and go, hey, what's this? And I like that your beer had a story. It was a slow beer, meaning that you weren't rushing it out. You wanted to let it settle a little bit longer than most beers. But I think you mentioned it earlier. Your Black Mist, that I will say hands down is my favorite beer in your stable because it's a dark beer. And yeah, there still aren't a lot of dark beers in the country, but at the time when that came out, that was, that's I don't buy a lot of 4-packs or 6-packs of craft beer, but that was one of the beers that I would actually drop I was going to say 100 Rand notes. Maybe it's a little bit more than that now.
I'll organise your box.
Thank you.
And it's on air. So.
Yeah. But one thing I've also been a fan of is local brewers or communities starting a brewery and servicing their area. I said it at the end of last year that the brewers or breweries that are going to survive in South Africa are the ones that are going to look after their small community and just focus on their area. How has that been for you in terms of looking after the Darling area, in terms of looking after the Swartland area? You know, for the people who are not from the area, this is the country's biggest biodiversity in the southern hemisphere. I think you've got, I won't get into too many facts, but it's full of flora and fauna. But you've got a lot of coastal villages, you've got a lot of mountain towns, you've got the Cederberg, you've got the West Coast. Has it been a what's the word I'm trying to look for? Not dominated in that market, but have you looked after those kind of towns and stuff? Are you well known? Do you have a footprint in your surrounding area?
These are always difficult questions for me to answer, not because I don't have the answers. I've got to be careful what I say because I might give our secret away. If you just use
it's just us, Kevin. It's just you and I.
One of our strategies right in the beginning was let's focus on Paternoster, let's focus on Rebecca Steele, Darling. What we didn't it wasn't a question we didn't know. The people who go to those villages, who are they? They're holiday makers, whether they're Cape Townians, upcountry, international. All they do is go back to the city and say, where do I get this beer? So they were a massive spearhead for us. I don't think we actually understood the impact, economic impact we would have on the area. We get a lot of support, for example, from the Western Cape tourism. And all the villages around us, so from Piketberg, Riebeekasteel, Paternoster, Langebaan, you name it, Eysterfontein. If you look at our beer festivals, they're big. Who's at our beer festivals? Those individuals. I think we are also, we have a very diverse, one of the biggest criticisms leveled at craft beer today, it's too white. We're fortunate. If you come to our beer festivals, it is 50-50. And I think that's got a lot to do with these villages where economically there's a lot of people in these villages that have that are now mainstream part of the economy. And they're spending money. They're looking money to spend the stuff on craft beer, good wine, good food. So we're fortunate in that respect. And we definitely become a tourist destination. We're not as big as
some of the other boys,
our CBC friends, but we're building on that.
Yeah.
We had 10,000 people through our taste room in December. That's huge. And we're also fortunate that we've got another season which other people don't have. It's called the flower season. And you can't force that because there are no flowers anywhere else other than the West Coast. Which
is now, if I'm correct.
Which is now. So we're going to have another 8,000 people come through our taste room in December. And very interesting, if I look at our hits on our website, the vast majority of people click on our beer. The next 30% more are clicking onto our taste room. Now, whether that's a thing because it's because they want to come to the taste room. They want to come and experience whatever, the beers, the food, and everything's locally sourced. So, we also try and support the local communities. A lot of people come and knock on our doors, but it's not about that.
Yeah.
We want best quality products, but at the end of the day, we owe it to the community to support them first. And if they're not the quality we want, to help them get there. It's not just about, we'll go somewhere else. We will tell you what's wrong with our humble input.
Hat in hand, sure.
Totally. This is not arrogant.
Yeah.
And we're very big on natural. You have to be today, whether it be health, whether it be just the environment. And I don't lecture people. Our beers are about awareness, not lecturing. And I want my kids to go down to the beach and walk on a clean beach. I want them to go and swim in a clean river.
Sure, yeah.
Where do you get that today?
Yeah.
You walk down to the beaches, they're filthy. You go to the Cederberg, you want to see a Varroa eagle. You're
going to struggle.
Exactly. So for me, it's awareness, and it's about what do we leave to our kids without being corny or bunny hugging. I don't know what words to use, but
sure. No, I've mentioned it to you before, and this is one of, I think, your strongest strengths, and for other brewers listening out there, I think having that underlying message to a brand really sets you apart from other brewers, because we're getting into an age now, good timing for what's happened recently, but we get into a stage now where a lot of the breweries, not just South Africa, but around the world, where the quality is reaching a certain level, where the price point is, again, looking kind of looking averaging out at the same. And a brand name is just a brand name, but what does that brand actually stand for? What is the underlying message? Are you contributing to a certain element of life? And I think with what you just said now, with you looking after your environment, looking after the area, the animals, that should, I don't know about percentages, but that should sell you an extra % of your beer. So for any brewers listening, if you don't have an underlying message, you don't have to, it'd be nice if you supported the environment, but you need to have some kind of underlying message. Are you, are you a surfer? Do you like looking after the ocean? Are you an adventurer? Do you like skateboarding? Do you like to cycle? I don't know. I'm just thumbsucking different ideas, but you need to have an underlying message that speaks to a certain community, that gives back into a certain community. There was some other stuff that I wanted to get into before we played some music, but I think we can take a quick music break. Before the music break, Darling is a wonderful destination brewery, and if you haven't had the opportunity to go yet, I think now is a pretty good time because the flowers are in bloom. So, guys, if you are wanting to go for beer, you can maybe tell the missus, hey, flowers are in bloom. Ladies, if you want to go for a beer, you can tell to your fellas, hey, the flowers are in bloom. Right, let's take a quick music break. We'll play 2 little songs, and then we'll see you guys in a short bit. See you now. Ciao, ciao. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Hashtag Beer Time with me, T-Bone Troy. We've got Kevin in the studio from Darling Brewing Company. And the songs you heard were She's Got the Love by Florence and the Machine. And then you also heard Frank Sinatra, The Best Is Yet to Come. Kevin, is the best yet to come?
Well, just on that, I remember listening to that Frank Sinatra song in 1990, walking in the snow in London while I was living there. Brings back pretty cool memories. But Florence and the Machines, I did an awesome road trip with my pregnant wife and her 2 brothers in the Czech Republic a few years ago.
Oh, yes.
And that's the first time I ever heard Florence and the Machines. Very cool music.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm glad I'm bringing back some good memories. Guys, you are listening to Hashtag Beer Time, the show all about beer, and I've got a delicious Arrowhead in front of me. It's, as I said earlier in the show, it's the first time that I've started the show on a Russian Imperial Stout, and I'm going to finish it. It is delicious. I'm actually glad will I have another one? I don't know. Let's see how the show goes. I might just nurse this beer. It is changing as it warms, which is the great thing about these kind of beers. I'm getting a lot more chocolates and creamy notes. But let's move on to more recent topics or recent industry topics. We've been speaking for the first half of the show about the brand, where you guys have come from, the journey. You know, you guys are, I wouldn't say national monuments for 100 years, but you guys are one of the godfathers of the Cape Town, South African brew scene, because you started last decade, which is, you know, the majority of the South African breweries have only started in the last 3 to 4 years, by my estimates. But let's talk about the recent news, and we're talking obviously about the recent acquisition of the taproom assets by probably the biggest craft brewer in South Africa, Devil's Peak. For those of you who don't know, Taproom were Kevin, you might have to help me out here. Taproom were the largest independent tap installation and keg distributor in South Africa. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So they would go to restaurants, they would have a massive portfolio. Any small independent craft brewer who didn't actually have the financial startup in terms of equipment, who didn't have money for kegs and dispensing equipment, or even delivery, you know, they handed this over to the taproom. The taproom took care of it. They dealt with distribution, tap installations throughout the country. I think I'm guessing again, I think it was more than 40 brewers. There might be a bit more, but that's from what I last read. So recently, Devil's Peak have come in. I think it's Devil's Peak or their distribution, Signal Hill. They've come in. They've acquired all the assets. They've bought 100% of Taproom. They've taken it over. So there's been a bit of an outrage or outroar in terms of what's going to happen to these smaller brewers. And it's been very interesting. I mean, I was at this last weekend, I was at the On Tap at the Tip Beer Festival, which was at Fraser's Folly, which is located at the Black Oyster Catcher. It's quite close to the southernmost tip of Africa, which is Cape Agulhas. And it was a great turnout. There were lots of people there. And I think there were about a handful, maybe 10 brewers pouring their beers there. But the top subject that every brewer kept talking about when I went to their stand was, what's going to happen now? Like, they've had their beers on tap for 1 year, 2 years, or had the relationship with On Tap and the restaurant owners. Now that Devil's Peak have acquired these taps, these assets, there's a bit of concern, a bit of worry for these smaller guys. Kevin, I know that Darling is included in this kind of brackets in terms of brewers in the portfolio. I know that Russell from Devil's Peak released a statement, I think it was yesterday, just saying, following on in the wake of different articles and what people have said, Darling's, the Devil's Peak still only have about 60% retail space at the moment with the current setup, and they don't see that changing. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen. I can imagine as a small craft brewer, if the tap room is your only form of distribution, I can imagine a lot of sleepless nights for these small brewers. Without throwing you under the bus, Kevin, what are your thoughts? I mean, do you think these small guys are going to struggle? And I'm not bracketing you in the small category. I'm talking about the guys who don't have the brewery that you have, who don't have the destination. I'm talking about the smaller guys.
Look, I think we all have sleepless nights, and it's not just relevant to Devil's Peak. Jack Black, Heineken, Soweto Gold. I mean, you've seen the money Soweto Gold are spending at the moment. Red Rock's in there at the moment. These guys all have massive budgets behind them. Out of the, whatever you call, we refer to as the Big Five, we're the guys who the poor cousins. So I feel the same things that the smaller guys do. We're just in a slightly different position, but we've reached out to a couple of them, and not just now. Over the past 12 months, Nick from Drifters, for example, Mark from Riot. I think there are different ways of working together. And there's lessons to be learned from the big brother, AB InBev, Heineken, Diageo. I think they got more to worry about than what we have. And it's not about what's getting said on social media and in the media at the moment.
I think Devil's Peak have a massive responsibility now.
They do.
If they've taken over this, brewing good beer is one thing, but distribution and, I mean, I've had my fair share of sales and being on the distribution end when I was working at Jack Black. It's a whole nother ball game to just get one or two brands in your SKU. I mean, Devil's Peak have acquired a few other brands into their portfolio. I think, as one person said, to mask their strategy, but I think they've got a beautiful selection of different brands in their portfolio. But having said that, there's a massive responsibility on their shoulders in terms of doing the right thing. What the right thing is, I mean, that's very subjective. I mean, we could debate that as much as we debate what is craft beer. So it is a very interesting time. I do kind of feel that, having spoken to a few people this weekend, I know I chatted to one beer influencer, and she will hate that word, but she is considered a beer influencer, and she said it would be weird if it was another brewer, or if it was let's look, if it was Heineken that excuse me, if it was Heineken that acquired the taps, there would be a complete outrage, but it's kind of, she said it's kind of okay that it's maybe Devil's Peak, because if we look at the quality of beer that's coming out of the Devil's Peak stable, it's all top notch. It's all, when we talk about the top 5 brewers in South Africa, we're looking at quality. And, 3 years ago, I don't want to make any enemies at Devil's Peak, but 3 to 5 years ago, I don't think Devil's Peak were in the power seats in terms of being South Africa's number 1 brewer. I think now, with the introduction of all their brands and their SKUs and their experimentals, their collaborations, they really have jumped to the top of the pile in terms of, let's just focus on quality. And they have jumped to the top of the pile in terms of quality. So, having taken over these taps, and having for the consumer, having the opportunity to get an Amanson's or a Makella or a Devil's Peak Blockhouse on tap in some remote town is, from a consumer's point of view, that's fantastic, because it's growing the craft beer brand. It's opening up craft beer to people that weren't exposed to craft beer. Not only that, that it's top quality. Now, I'm talking specifically from the consumer point of view. From the brewer's point of view, being a small brewer, yes, you might get squeezed out, or, if your beer is not up to scratch, if it's not selling, if it's selling, I think there was a rule when I was at Jack Black, you needed to sell 4 kegs a month through a tap. Anything less, then the beer could come stale, sour, go off. If you're not pushing those numbers, then maybe it's terrible for you as a business, but it's better for the industry. Taking a objective view from the top. I kind of just rambled and kept talking there.
I think you've mentioned it. There's 2 interesting things. One, quality. We have to get the quality of our beer right in South Africa, because it's hurting the craft category. And there's just too many. We've also had our issues. So I feel for guys who have serious quality issues, but people have to fix it. You can't be selling a beer at $40 and it's crap. That's not what craft beer should taste like. And these guys who think it's cool to just stick a label on a beer and to damage the category, it's not cool. And I don't think enough of that gets spoken about. The flip side, to get back to the Devil's Peak scenario, I think when our beer starts to become the same price as industrial beer, we got a problem. And you just got to look around you. Australia, America, the chasm that was there is wrong. The inputs we have versus the A&B, InBev, Heineken are so much more. To build a brewery like we've got now, you're in for 100 million.
Yes.
Go and do the numbers. And unless you've got a sustainable investor behind you, you're going to run at a loss for a long time. To start giving beer away and buying market share, I don't think that's the way to go. I think that's wrong. We all get into business to make money. I'm not here to screw anybody. But when you start, our beers are now the same prices. I mean, I was in the trade last week. Castle Light, 69 Rand a 6-pack. Jack Black, 69 Rand a 6-pack. Devil's Peak. What are we trying to do?
Yeah.
And It's not like that in the States. It's not like that in the UK. It's not like that in Europe. So why?
I will say this, and this is one thing I did notice which pissed me off, was that I think it was the SAB brands, like the Castle Lights, that saw, craft beer is selling at, this was 3 years ago, craft beer is selling at 40 Rand a pint, which back then that's a lot of money for a pint. And I think the SAB or Castle Light price was 25 Rand a pint. So I think the mindset there was like, well, if the consumer is willing to pay 40 Rand, let's just jump up our prices. And I'd like to actually see the stats or look at the jump in price, but I think in the last 3 to 5 years, the price of mainstream lagers has jumped tremendously. I'm not sure of the facts or the numbers, percentages, but I can guarantee you it's been abnormal. It's just been ridiculous. So you do touch on a great point there where, the price should be a little bit different from a mainstream one type of malt, one type of hop, introductory, or can I say introductory lager to a beer that's, 4 types of malt, 4 types of hops, smaller scale. So I can see how that would be potentially damaging. Just to jump on, carry on talking about this, and I'm sure we could have a lot of opinions. I see my phone blinking for people who probably want to phone in, but no, you can't phone in because it's my show. It's my opinion. But I do want to kind of play devil's advocate and express an opinion. Maybe it's not an opinion that I feel strongly about, but it is maybe something that we need to think about with this whole Devil's Peak taproom takeover. I'd like to look at 3 things that I think will happen in the next, 3 months, 6 months, to a year. What's going to happen to the smaller guys, to those brewers, to those business owners? And I think that the good thing, Kevin, you jumped on it briefly with quality, and I think what we are going to see is the brewers or business owners with poor quality beers are going to fall away. Mm-hmm. Which, if you say it like that, it's not a bad thing. When you make it very personal, and then someone like me who knows, I won't lie, a handful of these brewers, it makes it a little bit more personal, a little bit more. That's terrible news. I'd hate that to happen. Poor quality is just the number one issue that we have in South Africa at the moment. We have, last time I counted, more than 200 craft brewers. If you really think about it, you would struggle to find 10 craft brewers who, and this is my opinion, you'd struggle to find 10 craft brewers that you thought were producing an 8 or 9 or 10 out of 10 beer in this country.
I agree.
And, if we're going to start culling or eliminating brewers who are not up to scratch, I'm sorry, guys, but this is maybe one of those ways that how that's going to happen. Following on from that, I think a big problem in our country is brewers with an immature or inexperienced palate. I think guys are starting brewing and getting into it and then tasting a beer and then thinking, this will do, this is fine, this is acceptable, I will drink this. Yet to a trained palate or someone who's maybe been drinking a few more beers than them, if they drink this beer and they say, this is actually not that good. I think, we need to improve brewers' palates. I think brewers need to, this is again my opinion, brewers need to get international beers or beers from the UK, from London, from the US. Why is McKillis number 1? Why is Beavertown doing so well? Why is Cloudwater doing well? Why is Dogfish always doing so well? Brewers need to taste that beer and have a benchmark to measure to. And I kind of feel that brewers don't have that in South Africa, where they're not lucky enough to taste overseas beers, or maybe their palates haven't matured in a way. So I think that is education for the brewer that needs to improve. The second point. The third point in how this might benefit the industry is that the brewers or business owners that...
I think you need to have another one.
I think I need to have Okay. Well, we are a little bit towards the end of the show. But I think the third type of brewer or business that will fall away are bandwagon opportunists. People who have literally joined in the last 1-2 years, who simply just jump in on the coattails of other people or other businesses, just thinking that maybe there's a buck to be made in this industry, and wanting to sell or wanting to produce beer. So long as it sells, so long as there's money coming in, I don't care. And I think that's what needs to disappear. So those three things: immature palates, poor quality brewers, or poor quality beers rather, and then bandwagon opportunists. So that is a bit of a devil's advocate kind of outlook, or maybe opinion that you might agree with, you might disagree with. Obviously, when you attach the personal element of knowing a lot of these brewers, then yeah, of course, it does become difficult. So you do need to almost look objectively. Is the craft category going to grow? I've been talking for way too long.
Well, you're pretty good at it.
What's the solution, Kevin? What can we do to... What would you guys do as a solution?
Well, there was an interesting article in the Business Times last week about business in South Africa in general. And it was written by the World Bank.
Mm.
There's too many monopolies in South Africa. And this is not about the beer industry. It's about retail. It's about food. It's about everything. And the only way we're going to solve it for the consumer is to have competition. And right now, there is no competition, and there's no interest in... And I think a good example is if you look at what H&M and Zara have done to retail in South Africa, they've busted it wide open.
Mm.
You need a grocer, you need another big beer company, you need food producers. That's the only way that's going to solve. And this is about the end. It's about the consumer. I don't think, whether it be Devil's Peak, CBC, Jack Black, because those are the big guys, for them to just create another monopoly, they're going to have to deal with what A and B InBev dealt with. There's not a lot of like for them out there, and the Devil's Peak boys and the Union guys, they're quite open about it. I think you just got to look how A and B InBev bit themselves in the backside. They launched that 109 Rand 18 pack a year ago, almost today. Today they're down to a 12 pack for the same price, and people are, I think, A and B InBev are 6% down on last year. If it wasn't for Corona and Budweiser, they'd be even more down. So they're just... When I say we have to learn from the lessons around us, to just bulldoze in and make the same mistakes, it's just kind of... I think as humans, there are very few clever ones out there. I'm sorry to say it.
Yeah.
But you know what, the wine industry in this country is a fantastic lesson, which I for years have been saying, let's not do the same thing. They've all done the same thing in the beer industry. I just don't get it. It's not sustainable. I know what these guys, and this is not a reference to Devil's Peak, I know what a keg costs to put on the market. When you're giving away 1 in 5 deals, really? You're not making money. You're just buying that market.
Yeah.
And at some point, you're either going to go bang, or you're going to have to come up with a realistic price.
And you're stuffing it up for everyone else.
And to me, in apartheid South Africa, we bred a bunch of sharks, businessmen. That legacy is still with us, and we need to change it. I I'm just a normal guy trying to make a bit of bucks, trying to create a bit of a living, doing something I enjoy doing. Maybe inspiring some people along the way.
It's interesting what you said there with the smaller brewers. I do feel, I said it, I think on my show last week or on the podcast last week. There's always an advantage that the smaller guys have that the bigger guys don't have. And with those three things that I said earlier about brewers and business owners, those brewers that need to go. If you are a businessman or if you have the tenacity to actually change things and work it in your favor, then good for you. Go for it. Learn from this. Pivot. I think the smaller brewers have a smaller turning circle, whereas the big guys don't. And I think they need to adjust. They need to turn and change. And if you are very small and you're going to be affected by the taproom takeover, now's your chance to show us that you can survive and that you can turn it into an advantage. Look at Rory from Ager. I say it nearly every time on my show. But he stopped distributing his kegs, his bottles, and he just focused on his taproom. And now, a few months later, he discovered that, he realized that he needed to build another taproom. And that's how he's grown his business slowly. So he's one example. Greg Casey from Banana Jam. He just, I think he says, I know that the majority of his sales just comes from his taproom. And he's doing fantastic. I think he's going to fly me to Bali soon with all the mentions that I give him on my show. But Kevin, let's talk about solutions. And I think one of those solutions that you guys are focusing on is building a different tap room. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Are you allowed to?
Yeah, of course. The country bumpkins are coming to town.
Nice.
In the heart of Woodstock. We were fortunate enough to get a really cool new premise built in a state-of-the-art building. We're hoping to open before Christmas. There's obviously a lot of construction challenges, not from our side. The guys are on track, but you just never know.
This is Cape Town, yeah.
And I think that's part of, you alluded to it a few minutes ago. If you look at the States, there are national, regional, and localized brewers. I think that is part of the future of craft beer in South Africa. If you do not have state-of-the-art bottling line, don't even go down the bottling line because your beers are going to turn, and they're going to turn quickly, and you're going to get a bad rap. Rather do what you do well. A lot of these guys brew stunning beers. You drink them off tap, they're just like, wow, what a great beer. And then you drink it out the bottle and you think, never again. So I think that's a big part of the solution. And do it small. You don't have to go and spend $1 million on a trendy bar. Guys like us will put the rig in for you. That strips out 30,000 Rand. I don't want my beers pouring solely on the thing. I'm happy to say, give me 2 beers, do what you like with the rest of the line.
Yeah.
Guys like us are happy to help. And I reckon there's loads of opportunity. People don't always want to go to, I don't want to mention these guys on air, but there's a lot of dicks out there that I don't want to do business with. And I think we're all in the same boat. And these guys, because they've got the bucks behind them,
I think I have a good idea. Being a restaurant owner previously, I think I know.
They dictate and dominate. I'm not interested in dealing with people like that.
No, exactly.
And I think a lot more craft brewers need to adopt the same philosophy. If people don't have integrity, then don't deal with them.
Sure.
If they don't pay their bill, tell them to piss off.
Exactly.
Pull your stuff out.
No, exactly.
There's just too much of that in the industry right now. You look, our kegs, and I speak for all the bigger guys, and our kegs are more or less the same price as the SAB keg.
Yeah.
How on earth do you walk into a bar and our bar's $20 more than a SAB? It's just that's not us taking the piss. That's these bar owners and restaurants.
Sure.
And I'm probably going to get thrown off a few taps, but you know what? Hey, so what? Somebody's got to say it. I've said it.
Well, this is again. I repeat a few things on my show, and this was the great thing that I liked so much about Scott Kelly from when he worked at CBC. You know, he had a bit of a no bullshit attitude. You know, if you want the beer, here it is, this price, this is what you pay for it, and this is what you need to sell it at.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like that. You know, I'm going to do a Scott Kelly now. That's it.
Yeah.
You want it, you got to take it like this. So, you know, I that's what I appreciated, and, you know, something that I also followed on into my kind of sales technique. You know, I wasn't always trying to give deals and let's try and undervalue the whole craft beer industry. Let's have some pride in the product that we're making, and, you know, this whole journey that we're on. But yeah, I'm excited. I haven't, you know, kind of wrapping up the show. I'm excited with what's happening, with where we are. It's a very exciting stage to be involved in the craft beer industry. What can people expect in your tap room? How many? I mean, are you guys? Is it opposite? Is that new development opposite the
Woodstock Exchange?
Woodstock Exchange. Okay, and it's going to be a beautifully magnificent building, which gives me another good reason to stop over when I do my Woodstock rounds, visiting all the brewers. What can people expect there? How many taps? Are you going to be having any food? Similar to your setup in Darling?
Look, it's next generation stuff. So we're going to have eight taps in there. Six will be our core lines, and we've got some
plans,
some partners.
Okay.
Nick from Drifter, Mark from Riot. We will rotate their stuff. You know, I think it's important that the guys that are brewing good quality beer get a gap in that market. Food's going to be exceptional. Obviously, we're keeping it tight, small. But our new website launches on Friday. The guys can go out and they can check out some of the artist's impression of what it's going to look like. And
okay, brilliant.
This is not like designing an Audi and you never see it. This is what you see there.
Needs to be what you get.
And it's all locally made in Darling, through an artisan that built all our stuff in Darling. So we as best we can, we keep it local. And I think it's going to be a cool space. I hope it's going to be a cool space. You know?
No, it will be. I can tell you,
Well, Mark from Riot said to me, "It's going to work." I said, "I hope so." I think it's good for our brand that we've got our own space. You know, I think out of the top beer companies, we've never really focused on tap. You know, my focus has been retail, and we're very strong in retail. And it's all budget related. You know, stick a rig in there costs you 25, 30 grand. We just don't have that kind of capital, although we have rolled out a lot of taps of late. But I think that's a good way of getting our beer into the sustainable side of the trendy side of Cape Town. And we've also got an audience. We've got a captive audience. Above us, 274 apartments. And there's another 800 getting built around us on top of Woodstock Exchange. So that development I'm giving the Wex guys a punt. For them, it's a fantastic opportunity for investment. And it's not, we're talking 1.6 million to 3.8 million for an apartment there. So it's not.
Any of my craft beer friends, if we want to go chip in to an apartment, we can use it as you
can come down and have a
little hashtag beer time hotel. You pass out after a few beers. I'm very excited for that. So we can hopefully expect that before the end of the year. And that's the new Darling tap room, which is going to be a lot easier on my Uber ride home. Kevin, we need to start wrapping it up. I'd like to thank you for joining us on the show today. I've had an absolute blast. I'm stoked that we finally got you onto the show. Is there anything that you want to tell the listeners? Is there anything that you can maybe predict for the future of craft beer? What do you hope to see?
It's what's going to happen. America that's the journey. It's not about reinventing the wheel. I hope we're around. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
But I think it's an exciting space. I think you've, Muhammad Ali boxed George Foreman in Zaire many years ago, and nobody gave him a chance. I think that's how a lot of these small brewers they got to think. They got to go in there. The guy's bigger than me. He's going to beat the shit out of me. So let him beat the shit out of me for 6 rounds and punch himself out, and then I'll rope-a-dope him. The guys have just got to think clever. You've got to focus on your strengths right now. Because a lot of these guys have very good beer. And I think by focusing on your strengths and not selling yourself short and not getting into slagging other people off like a lot of people do, sell yourself. Don't trash somebody else. I reckon that's the...
No matter what industry you're in.
Totally. And I think just... And this includes Devil's Peak.
Yeah.
And CBC Jack Black. Let's just, you know what? There's a broader community out there. We are catering for 300,000.
Not even 1% of the market.
There's a big market there. We don't have to all fight with each other in amongst the hipsters. They're a very small part of what goes on.
They're fickle and they change quickly.
Totally.
Kevin, I love that analogy with the Ali Fraser fights, and I might just go back home and watch the YouTube video. Again, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Congratulations with this Arrowhead. I'm going to store some away for maybe 6 months, for maybe a year, and I'm looking for...
I'll give you a box of that.
Oh, there we go. So I was going to say, who am I kidding? I probably won't let it last around that long. Again, thank you very much to all our listeners. Thank you for tuning in. Yes, we went slightly over time, but I think it was worth it. If you thought it was a good show, please do contact me if you are fortunate to have my number or email address. But yeah, thank you very much again. Kevin, thank you very much.
Thanks, Troy.
Cool.
Great talking to you.
See you guys soon. Ciao, ciao. Thanks for listening, guys and girls. Make sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Just search for #BeerTime. That's #BeerTime written out in full. Hope you enjoyed the show, and check you next time. Cheers.